All right, buckle up, you soft modern snowflakes, because we're diving into why you'd be a frozen popsicle before lunch in a medieval winter. Picture this, it's 1347. The wind's howling like a banshee with a grudge, and you've just been yeeted back in time to a muddy village that smells like regret and pig farts. Your iPhone's useless. Your sneakers are already soaked, and the locals think you're a witch because you're wearing jeans. Welcome to hell, but colder. First off, let's talk about waking up. You're not in your cozy memory, foam bed with a lat machine humming nearby. Nah, you're on a straw mattress that's basically a petri dish for fleas and despair. The straw's poking your ass like it's auditioning for a torture device, and your blanket. It's a ratty piece of wool that smells like it was used to mop up a plague victim's fever sweat. Oh, and it's so cold your breath's forming snowflakes indoors. Indoors, the walls are wattle and daub, which is just fancy mud and sticks with gaps big enough to let in every Arctic gust. Your toes are already numb, and you're pretty sure frostbite's sending you flirty winks. You roll over, hoping for a snooze button, but instead, you get a rooster screaming like it's possessed. Time to start the day. You lazy sod. You stumble out of bed, or rather, off the floor, because beds are for rich people, and you're just a peasant now. Your clothes are a scratchy tunic and some leggings that look like they were sewn by a drunk badger. No underwear. By the way, medieval folks thought boxers were for cowards. So, your junk's just flapping in the breeze, which, trust me, isn't fun when it's 0 degrees. You're already dreaming of a hot shower, but spoiler alert, the closest thing to hygiene here is wiping your face with a damp rag that's been used by 6 other people. And that's the good news. The bad news: your room's got a chamber pot in the corner, and it's overflowing with last night's business. You gag, because it smells like Satan's armpit. And you realize you've got to empty it. Outside. In the snow. With no gloves. You grab the pot, sloshing its unholy contents, and waddle out into a blizzard that makes Game of Thrones look like a beach vacation. The village is a gray smear of misery. Huts sagging under snow. Icicles dangling like nature's middle finger. You slip on a patch of ice, because of course you do, and the chamber pot goes flying. Congrats, you're now covered in medieval poop soup. And the neighbors are laughing their frostbitten asses off. You're 5 minutes into the day, and you're already praying for a time machine. But nope, you're stuck here, and the fun's just beginning. Next up, you've got to find breakfast, which sounds nice until you realize food in medieval winter means a bowl of sadness and maybe some moldy bread. You trudge toward the village's only kitchen, a smoky shack where a grumpy old hag named Agnes is stirring something that looks like it was scraped off a dungeon floor. Agnes glares at you like you just kicked her cat, and you're starting to think surviving this day might be harder than dodging the Black Death. Spoiler, it is. So, you're standing in Agnes's kitchen, shivering like a chihuahua in a snowstorm, with poop stains on your tunic and a stomach growling louder than a Viking raid. Agnes, who looks like she's been angry since the Norman conquest, thrusts a bowl of gray sludge at you. Eat, she barks, and you peer into the bowl, expecting oatmeal or maybe porridge. Nope. It's pottage, the medieval equivalent of sadness in liquid form. Imagine a soup made of boiled dirt, a sad onion, and whatever weeds eggs found behind the privy. You take a sniff, and your soul tries to yeet itself back to 2025. Is this food? You ask, and Agnes smacks you with a ladle. Ungrateful whelp, she screeches, and you realize questioning the chef here is a one-way ticket to a black eye. You choke down a spoonful, and it tastes like regret and feet. There's a weird crunch, probably a twig or a beetle, but you're too hungry to care. Medieval winter means food scarcity. No supermarkets, no DoorDash. Just whatever you scraped together before the frost killed everything. The rich folks might be gnawing on salted pork, but you're eating nature's leftovers. And nature's a stingy bastard. You glance around, hoping for a side dish, maybe some bread. Agnes cackles, tossing you a rock, hard lump that could double as a murder weapon. Fresh this morning, she lies, and you chip a tooth trying to bite it. Your modern dentist is screaming somewhere in the multiverse. Meanwhile, the kitchen's so smoky you can barely see. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof, and the fire's burning damp wood that smells like a wet dog's existential crisis. Your eyes are watering, your lungs are staging a coup, and you're pretty sure you're inhaling pure carbon monoxide. How do you live like this? You wheeze, and Agnes just shrugs. Don't die, she says, which is apparently the medieval motto. You're halfway through your bowl of misery when a kid bursts in, snot frozen to his face, yelling about a cow stuck in a snowdrift. Agnes curses, grabs a stick, and storms out, leaving you alone with the pottage. You're tempted to dump it, but hunger's a cruel mistress. So you keep eating, each bite a fresh insult to your taste buds. Then you notice the cold again. The kitchen's barely warmer than outside, and your fingers are turning blue. You're wearing every scrap of cloth you own, but it's like wrapping yourself in tissue paper during a polar vortex. You sidle closer to the fire, but a stray spark lands on your tunic. And now you're slapping out flames while cursing in ways that make a monk blush. The day's barely started, and you're already a walking disaster. You stumble outside, hoping to escape the smoke, only to find the village buried under fresh snow. The cow's still stuck, mooing like it's auditioning for a tragedy, and a crowd of peasants is arguing about how to free it. Nobody's got a plan, but they've got plenty of opinions, and you're starting to see why medieval life expectancy was like 30. You're freezing, hungry, and covered in questionable stains, and now you've got to help save a cow or risk starving later. Spoiler, this cow's not worth it. But you're about to learn that the hard way, your knee deep in snow, surrounded by peasants who smell like they bathed in a septic tank, all yelling about this damn cow. It's wedged in a snowdrift, mooing like it's cursing your entire bloodline, and you're wondering why you didn't just stay in bed. Oh wait, because bed is a flea-infested war zone. The head peasant, a guy named Rolf with a beard that could hide a badger, shoves a rope into your hands. Pull, you scrawny git. He bellows, and you realize you're now part of a medieval tug of war with a 1,000-pound bovine. You tug, your hands burning from the frost and the rope's texture, which is basically sandpaper's evil twin. The cow doesn't budge, but your shoulders screaming like it's filing for divorce. The other peasants are pulling too. except for one guy who's just pretending while muttering about cursed omens. You're like, Barreau. The only curse here is this weather, but you keep pulling because Rolf's got a pitchfork and zero chill. The snow's up to your thighs, soaking your leggings, and you're pretty sure your balls have migrated to your stomach for warmth. Medieval winter doesn't mess around. It's so cold you're fantasizing about jumping into a volcano just to feel something. Finally, the cow lurches free, but momentum's a bitch, and it charges straight at you. You dive into a snowbank face, planting into what you hope is just ice but smells suspiciously like horse crap. The peasants cheer, not for you, but because the cow's alive, which means they won't starve. Yet, Rolf slaps your back, nearly dislocating your spine, and says, "Good work, new guy. Now muck the stables." Muck the stables. You're still spitting out mystery snow, and now you're on poop, shoveling duty. You trudge to the stable, a rickety shed that smells like Satan's laundry basket. Inside, it's a steaming pile of manure and misery, with half-frozen horses giving you the side eye. You grab a shovel, but it's so cold the handle sticks to your skin, peeling off a layer like a sadistic Band-Aid. You start scooping, each shovelful a reminder that medieval life is just a series of increasingly gross chores. Your stomach's still mad about the pottage, and the stable's stench is making its stage a full rebellion. You're gagging so hard you're pretty sure your soul's trying to escape. Then, a rat the size of a toaster scampers across your foot, and you scream like you're auditioning for a horror flick. The horses snort, unimpressed, and you're starting to think they're the real bosses here. You're halfway through the pile when Rolf pokes his head in. "Hurry up, lad! We've got to check the traps before the wolves get M." Traps, wolves. You're a city kid who thinks wildlife is a pigeon stealing your fries, and now you're supposed to play Bear Grylls in a frozen hellscape. You stumble out, and you're still clinging to your boots, and follow Rolf into the woods. The snow's deeper here, swallowing your legs, and every branch you pass dumps more snow down your neck. You're shivering so hard your teeth are playing a marimba solo. And Rolf's just trudging along like this is a sunny picnic. You're not even noon, and you're already praying for a quick death. But medieval winter's got more torture in store. You're trudging through the forest with Rolf, who's whistling like he's on a nature hike, while you're one icicle away from becoming a human popsicle. The trees are bare, the wind slicing through your tunic like it's got a personal vendetta, and you're pretty sure your nipples could cut glass. Rolf's jabbering about checking the traps, which sounds like a cute hunting gig until he mentions the wolves. "Big bastards," he says, grinning. "Tore off half Hand Jim's leg last winter." You laugh, thinking it's a joke, but Rolf's dead serious, and now you're scanning the woods for glowing eyes. You're not built for this. Your survival skills are limited to restarting your router and ordering pizza. The snow's so deep you're waddling like a penguin, and every step feels like a betrayal from your own legs. Finally, you reach a trap, a rusty contraption that looks like it could amputate your hand just for fun. There's a rabbit inside, half frozen and giving you a look that says, "Same, bro." Rolf yanks it out, snaps its neck like it's just another Tuesday, and tosses it into a sack. "Good eatin' tonight," he says. And you're like, "Bruh, that's barely an appetizer." You check a few more traps, scoring 2 more rabbits and a squirrel that looks like it died of disappointment. By now, your hands are so numb you can't feel the rope, and your face is frozen into a permanent grimace. Rolf is unfazed, probably because his beard's insulating him like a yeti. You're about to suggest heading back when you hear a howl, not like a distant coyote vibe, a full-on, "We're coming for your soul," wolf howl. Rolf grips his knife, and you realize your only weapon is a stick you picked up to look cool. "Run, lad," Rolf yells, and you bolt, snow flying, heart pounding like it's trying to escape your chest. You're not athletic. Your cardio is dodging spoilers on an X, but fear's a hell of a motivator. You trip over a root, face plant into a snowdrift, and for a second you think, "This is it. I'm Wolf Cho." But Rolf hauls you up, laughing like a maniac. "They're just playing," he says, and you're like, "Peel, eyeing. I'm not a chew toy." You stumble back to the village, rabbits in tow, your ego in tatters. The wolves don't follow, thank God, but the cold's still kicking your ass. You're soaked, shivering, and your tunic's clinging to you like a sad wet dog. Back at the village, Agnes is waiting, hands on hips, ready to judge. "Took ye long enough," she snaps, snatching the rabbits. "Now help with the fire." You're too tired to argue, so you drag yourself to the woodpile, which is just a sad stack of damp logs. Chopping wood sounds manly until you try it with a rusty axe and 0 upper body strength. Each swing misses, or worse, gets stuck, and the villagers are snickering again. You're sweating despite the cold, which is just your body's way of saying, "We're confused and hate you." By some miracle, you split a log. But it's so damp it'll probably just smoke out the whole village. You're exhausted, starving again, and it's not even lunchtime. Medieval winter's laughing in your face, and you're starting to think death by wolf might have been the easier option. You're hauling your pathetic pile of damp wood back to Agnes's kitchen, feeling like a failure who just got fired from the world's worst lumberjack gig. Your arms are noodles. Your back's screaming, and you're pretty sure you've got frostbite in places you didn't know could freeze. Anne takes one look at your wood. Phrasing, and scoffs. "This'll burn like a wet fart," she says, which is somehow the nicest thing she's said all day. You drop the logs by the fire, praying for a break. But Agnes shoves a knife and one of the rabbits at you. "Skin it," she orders, and you stare at the furry corpse like it's a final exam you didn't study for. You're a modern softie who cries when you step on a snail. And now you're supposed to gut Tumper. You poke the rabbit, hoping it'll magically skin itself, but it just lies there, judging you. Agnes rolls her eyes and starts hacking at another rabbit, fur and blood flying like a medieval horror flick. You try to copy her, but your knife skills are more drunk toddler with scissors than Bear Grylls. You nick your finger, yelp, and drop the rabbit into the fire. The room fills with the smell of burning hair, and Agnes looks ready to skin you instead. "Useless as a nun's tits," she mutters, and you're too traumatized to argue. Eventually, you manage to peel off some fur. But it's a mangled mess, and the rabbit looks like it lost a fight with a lawnmower. Aang tosses it into the pottage pot anyway, because medieval standards are basically audible-ish. You're gagging, but hunger's winning, and you're starting to eye the pottage like it's a Michelin-starred dish. The fire's barely going, thanks to your crap wood, so the room's still freezing, and everyone's huddled around the flames like they're worshipping a sad candle. Your stomach's doing backflips, and you realize you haven't peed all morning because you're terrified of the privy. Medieval bathrooms. Just a hole in the ground, usually outside, with a side of frostbite and zero privacy. You'd rather hold it until you explode. Just as you're contemplating your bladder's imminent surrender, Rolf bursts in, covered in snow and smelling like he wrestled a skunk. Lord's men are coming, he yells, and the room goes silent. Apparently, the local lord's goons are swinging by to collect taxes or harass everyone, and you're like, taxes. I'm eating dirt soup, but medieval lords don't care about your vibes. They want grain, coin, or your dignity, and they're not picky. Agnes starts hiding the good pottage, yes. There's apparently a hierarchy of sludge, and you're tasked with sweeping the floor to make the hovel look presentable. Sweeping's a nightmare because the floor's just dirt. And you're basically rearranging filth. You're sneezing from the dust, your hands are blistered, and you're pretty sure you just swept up a rat turd. The Lord's men are due any minute, and you're still covered in rabbit blood and manure, looking like a serial killer's intern. You're praying they don't notice you, but knowing your luck, you're about to be the main event in their medieval shit show. The cold's still gnawing at you, and you're starting to think surviving this day is less likely than finding why. In 1347, you're sweeping dirt like it's your life's calling, but the hovel still looks like a landfill with ambitions. Your hands are raw. Your nose is running like it's training for the Olympics, and you're praying the Lord's men don't single you out for looking like a walking biohazard. Aang's is hissing orders, hiding anything remotely valuable, like a single bent spoon, while Rolf's outside, probably bribing someone with a half-dead squirrel. You're mid-sweep when the door slams open, and in strut 3 goons in chainmail, looking like they bench press oxen for fun. The leader, a guy with a face like a pissed-off bulldog, barks, "Taxes." Now, and you're like, "Bro, I've got negative assets." Aang shoves you behind a barrel, whispering, "Keep quiet, or they'll take your teeth for coin." Teeth. These people are unhinged. The goons start poking around, kicking over pots, and sniffing the pottage like they're Gordon Ramsay's evil cousins. You're crouched, trying not to sneeze, but your bladder's screaming, and you're clenching harder than a nun at a strip club. Bulldog Face demands grain, but Agnes plays dumb, claiming the harvest was eaten by demons. He's not buying it, and you're sweating despite the cold because you're pretty sure tax evasion here means a one-way trip to a dungeon. Then, disaster, you slip, knocking over the barrel, and crash into the open. The goons spin, swords half drawn, and you're flailing, covered in dirt and rabbit guts, stammering, just cleaning." Bulldog Face squints, probably wondering if you're worth robbing, but your vibe screams, broke and useless, so he just spits and moves on. You're alive, but your ego's in the ICU. Agnes glares like you just sold her soul to Satan. And the goons finally leave, taking a sack of moldy barley and Rolf's dignity. You're shaking. But there's no time to process because Agnes shoves a bucket at you. Fetch water. She snaps, and you're like, now. I almost died, but arguing with Agnes is like wrestling a bear. So you grab the bucket and stumble outside. The village well is a half-mile trek through snow that's deeper than your will to live. Your boots, more like soggy rags, are leaking, and every step feels like wading through frozen concrete. The wind's howling, pelting you with ice pellets that sting like a swarm of drunk bees. You're fantasizing about hot cocoa, but the closest thing here is boiled turnip juice, and that's a hard pass. You reach the well, a stone pit that looks like it's seen better centuries, and realize there's no fancy pump, just a rope and a bucket that's heavier than your life choices. You lower it, praying for clean water, but it comes up with a soupy mix of ice, mud, and something that might be a dead frog. Great. You're not drinking this, but Agnes will probably turn it into deluxe pottage. Your hands are so numb you can barely grip the rope, and the bucket keeps swinging, splashing your face with medieval sludge. You're cursing loud enough to scare a monk when you hear a laugh. It's Hilda, the blacksmith's daughter, leaning against a tree, smirking. New guy's softer than a lord's arse, she says, and you're too cold to clap back. She's your next problem, but first, you've got to haul this plague water back without dying of hypothermia. You're lugging the bucket of questionable well water back to the village, your arms screaming, and your face numb from the wind's relentless bitch slap. Hilda's still trailing you, tossing insults like she's got a PhD in medieval shade. Bet you'd cry if a pig farted too loud. She cackles, and you're tempted to dump the bucket on her. But you're too weak to lift it that high. The snow's up to your knees, and every step's a gamble between slipping or sinking. Your tunic's soaked, clinging to you like a clingy X, and you're pretty sure your toes are staging a mutiny. Hilda, somehow unbothered by the cold, keeps pace, her boots crunching smugly. "What's a fancy lad like you doing here?" she asks, eyeing your jeans, which are now more mud than denim. You mumble something about time travel, and she laughs so hard she snorts. Time travel. You're dafter than a drunk goose. You're too tired to explain, so you just grunt and keep waddling. Back at Agnes's, you dump the water into a cauldron, and she doesn't even look up, just mutters, "Took ye long enough, you lazy turd." You're starting to think, "Thank you" isn't in the medieval vocabulary. The cauldron's bubbling with what might be lunch, but it smells like a Jim Sock's funeral. Hilda plops down by the fire, still grinning, and you realize she's not leaving. Great, now you've got a heckler. Agnes hands you a turnip and a knife. "Chop," she says, and you're like, again with the manual labor. But you start hacking because you're too hungry to rebel. The turnip's tougher than a tax collector's heart, and your knife's duller than a flat earth tiddy talk. You're sawing away, fingers slipping, when Hilda leans in. "You hold a knife like a nun holds a lover," she says, and you accidentally slice your thumb. Blood's dripping, you're yelping, and Agnes just sighs like you're the village idiot. Hilda, unprompted, grabs a rag, wraps your thumb, and winks. "Don't die yet. Softy. You're fun to torment. You're not sure if she's flirting or plotting your demise, but you're too dizzy to care. The fire's still pathetic, so the room's freezing, and your wet clothes are giving you chills, like you're auditioning for a pneumonia commercial. You're chopping turnips, trying not to lose another finger, when Rolf stomps in, tracking snow everywhere. Tavern tonight, he announces, like it's the Super Bowl. You're like, Tavern? With what money? But Rolf just slaps your back, nearly knocking you into the cauldron. You're coming, lad. Gotta toughen you up. You're picturing a cozy pub with beer and vibes, but deep down, you know it's gonna be a cesspool of drunks and despair. Aggins grumbles, but hands you a bowl of pottage for lunch. You choke it down, each bite a war crime against your taste buds, while Hilda's still smirking like she knows something you don't. You're exhausted, your thumbs throbbing, and the tavern sounds like a terrible idea. But Rolf's not taking no for an answer. You're barely surviving the morning, and now you're about to dive into medieval nightlife, which probably involves war maul, fistfights, and more bodily fluids than you're ready for. The cold's still your worst enemy, but this day's got more curveballs coming, and you're fresh out of Dodge. You're slumped by the fire, nursing your throbbing thumb and a bowl of pottage that's actively trying to ruin your life. Rolf's hyping up this tavern trip like it's Vegas, but you're just praying for a nap. Hilda's still here, sharpening a knife and grinning like she's planning to carve your dignity into confetti. Aggins, fed up with your existence, shoves you out the door with Rolf, muttering, "Don't come back dead." No pressure, right? The village is a frozen wasteland, snow piling up like nature's middle finger, and the tavern's a slog away. Your boots are soggy death traps, and the wind's howling so loud you can't hear Rolf's rambling about. Proper Al. You're shivering harder than a hairless cat in a blizzard, and your tunic's doing jack to keep you warm. You're fantasizing about a snuggie and a space heater, but medieval life's like, now, suffer. The tavern's a sagging wooden shack that looks one sneeze away from collapsing. Inside, it's a sweaty, smoky mess. Think dive bar meets armpit convention. The air's thick with the stench of Al, B.O., and something you hope isn't human. Drunk peasants are yelling, a guy's playing a lute, like it personally offended him. And you spot a dog pissing in the corner. Classy. Rolf shoves a mug of Al into your hands, and it's warm, cloudy, and smells like fermented regret. You take a sip and gag. It's like drinking a yeast infection. Good eye. Rolf bellows, chugging his like it's Gatorade. You nod, because he's got fists like ham hocks. But you're already plotting to spill. This swill. Hilda slides in, because of course she does, and starts a drinking game where you lose if you wince. You lose immediately. The tavern's loud, chaotic, and somehow colder than outside, with drafts sneaking in like uninvited exes. You're wedged between Rolf, who's farting with every laugh, and a guy who's asleep in his own vomit. You're like, this is why the plague happened. Someone starts a fight over a spilled mug, and suddenly fists are flying, tankards are crashing, and you're ducking to avoid a stray tooth. Hilda's cheering, because she's clearly unhinged, and Rolf's swinging like he's settling a blood feud. You crawl under a table, clutching your owl like it's a life raft, but a boot kicks it over, and now you're soaked in medieval IPA. The fight dies down, and you emerge soggy and traumatized, just in time for the loot guy to start a sing-along. It's off key, the lyrics are about sheep in ways that aren't family-friendly, and you're forced to join or risk another brawl. You're mumbling along, voice cracking, when Hilda slaps your back. "You're all right, softy," she says, and you're too drunk to know if that's a compliment. The owl's hitting now, and you're woozy, the room spinning like a bad TikTok filter. You're starving again, but the only food's a communal trencher of grazy meat that's been pawed by every drunk in here. You take a bite, because screw it, and it's like chewing a shoe with extra gristle. The night's young, but you're already a mess, and medieval winter's about to remind you who's boss. You're half drunk in this godforsaken tavern, swaying like a sailor on a bender, with Hilda's cackle ringing in your ears and Rolf's armpit funk waging war on your nostrils. The owl's turned your brain to mush, and you're regretting that bite of mystery meat, which is staging a coup in your stomach. The loot guy's still butchering his song, and you're slurring along, because peer pressure's a bitch, even in 1347. Your tunic's soaked with spilled ale, your thumbs throbbing, and you're pretty sure you've got fleas from the bench you're sitting on. Medieval winter's laughing at you, and it's not even midnight. Hilda, who's somehow sober despite downing all, like it's water, drags you into a dice game with some shady peasants. You're like, "I suck at games," but she shoves bone dice into your hand and says, "Los, and I'll shave your head." You're not sure if she's joking, but her knife is gleaming, so you roll. The dice hate you, because of course they do, and you lose your only coin, a bent penny you found in the snow. The peasants laugh, Hilda smirks, and you're like, "This is why I stick to Candy Crush. The game's rigged, but you keep playing, because you're drunk and Hilda's scary, hot enough, might stab you. Way. You're broke in 10 minutes, and now you owe a guy named Stumpy a favor. Stumpy's missing 3 fingers, so you're not asking questions. The tavern's getting rowdier, with drunks dancing like they're possessed, and you're dodging flailing limbs and spilled owl. Your bladder's screaming again, and you realize there's no bathroom. Just a corner where people are pissing against the wall. You're like, "I'd rather die." But nature's insistent, so you waddle over, trying not to make eye contact with the guy next to you who's singing while he pees. It's freezing. The floor's slick, and you're pretty sure you're standing in someone else's ale. You stumble back, dignity in tatters, just as Rolf announces a storytelling contest. Great. Another way to humiliate yourself. He starts with a tale about fighting a boar, and it's so exaggerated you're waiting for him to claim he rode it to the moon. Hilda nudges you. "Your turn, softy," she says, and the crowd's staring. You panic because your best story's about forgetting your Uber password. So you make up some nonsense about slaying a snow dragon. The drunks eat it up, cheering, and you're like, "Maybe I'm not terrible at this." Then Stumpy stands, slurs a story about a cursed foot, and everyone forgets you. The tavern's spinning, your stomach's churning, and the cold's creeping in through the walls. You're shivering, drunk. and broke, with fleas hitching a ride on your soul. Hilda leans in, breath warm against your ear. "Survive the night, and I'll forge you a knife," she whispers, and you're like, is this a date or a death threat? Either way, you're intrigued, but the yell's winning, and you're one bad decision from passing out. Rolf's yelling about heading home, but the snow's piled up outside, and you're not sure you can walk. Medieval winter's got you by the balls, and it's squeezing hard. You're praying for a miracle, but the only thing coming is more misery. You're staggering out of the tavern, ale sloshing in your gut like a toxic tide, with Rolf's arm around you like you're his drunk toddler. Hilda's trailing, still smirking, probably plotting ways to make your life worse. The snow's coming down like it's auditioning for an apocalypse, and the wind's so fierce, it's practically personal. Your tunic's a soggy rag, your boots are ice buckets, and you're shivering so hard you're basically a human maraca. The village is a blurry smear of white, and you're like, how is this not Narnia, but worse? Rolf's singing about sheep in a way that's definitely not PG, and you're trying not to puke on his boots. The path home's buried under snow, and every step's a gamble between slipping or sinking into a drift. You're drunk, but not drunk enough to ignore the cold knowing at your bones like a pissed-off badger. Hilda's skipping ahead, unbothered, tossing snowballs at you with terrifying accuracy. One nails you in the face, and you're like, "Are you Satan's intern?" She just laughs, and you're starting to think she's the real medieval survival expert. You're halfway to Agnes's when you trip over something. Probably a rock, but it could be a frozen peasant for all you know. You plant into the snow, and it's so cold your tongue sticks to the ground. Rolf hauls you up, cackling, and you're spitting ice. Dignity long gone. Your stomach's doing somersaults. And you're praying you don't barf that mystery meat all over Hilda's boots. She'd probably make you lick it up. You're fantasizing about a hot bath, but the closest thing here is a bucket of well water, and that's got frog vibes. The village looms into view. Huts sagging under snow like they're as tired as you are. You're almost at Agnes's when you hear a crack, like horror movie, branch, snapping crack. You freeze, because drunk or not, you remember those wolf howls. Rolf squints into the dark, hand on his knife, and Hilda's suddenly quiet, which is scarier than the noise. Just the wind. Rolf mutters, but you're not buying it. You're picturing a wolf pack eyeing you like you're a walking burrito. You hustle, slipping and cursing, until you reach Agnes's door. Inside, it's barely warmer, the fire's down to embers, and Agnes is snoring like a chainsaw. You collapse by the hearth, too drunk to care about the straw poking your ass. Hilda tosses a log on the fire, sparks flying, and you're like, thanks, I guess. She just winks, and you're too woozy to decode it. Rolf's already passed out, farting in his sleep. And you're fighting to stay awake, because you're pretty sure medieval hangovers are a death sentence. Your clothes are wet, your thumbs still bleeding, and you've got fleas doing the che on your scalp. You're trying to process the day. Poop pots, pottage, wolves, taxes, and now a tavern bender. And it's not even midnight. The cold's still your worst enemy, seeping through the walls like a debt collector. You're curled up, shivering, praying for morning, but Medieval winter's like, oh, you thought this was bad? Hold my owl. You're drifting off, half dead when you hear another crack outside. Your eyes snap open, and you're wondering if you'll survive long enough to see Hilda's knife, or if the wolves are about to make you their midnight snack. You're curled up by Agnes's dying fire, drunk, freezing, and paranoid about that crack outside. Your heart's pounding like it's trying to escape, and you're picturing wolves busting in like furry debt collectors. Hilda's poking the fire, looking annoyingly calm, while Rolf's snoring loud enough to wake the dead. You whisper, did you hear that?" And Hilda rolls her eyes. It's just ice, softy. Or maybe your spine finally giving up. You're not convinced, but you're too tired to argue. The L's wearing off, leaving you with a headache that feels like a blacksmith's hammer to the skull. Your wet tunic's giving you chills, and the straw under you is stabbing your back like it's got a personal grudge. You're praying for sleep, but the cold's like, nah, let's keep this misery party going. You close your eyes, only to jolt awake when Agnes farts in her sleep, a sound so vile you're checking for chemical weapons. The room's a symphony of snores, creaks, and your chattering teeth, and you're like, this is why people invented Netflix. Morning's a distant dream, and you're stuck in this frozen hellhole, wondering if you'll wake up with all your fingers. Somehow, you doze off, dreaming of pizza and central heating, only to be yanked awake by Agnes kicking you. Oop, you useless lump. She screeches, and you're like, it's not even dawn, but the sky's a gray smear, and medieval life doesn't care about your REM cycle. Your head's throbbing, your mouth tastes like a sewer, and you're pretty sure you're hungover from one mug of ale. Pathetic. Agnes shoves a broom at you, because apparently sweeping dirt is your destiny, and you stumble outside to tidy the yard. The snow's piled up overnight, and it's so cold your eyelashes are freezing together. You're sweeping, which is pointless because the snow just laughs and buries your work. Your hands are numb, your thumbs still leaking blood, and you're cursing every time. Travel movie that made this look fun. Hilda saunters out, bundled in furs like a Viking supermodel, and tosses you a rag. Wrap your hand, idiot, she says, and you're too cold to snap back. You're starting to like her, but you're also 90% sure she'd sell you for a good dagger. The village is waking up. Peasants trudging through the snow, looking as miserable as you feel. Rolf's outside, hacking at ice with an axe, and you're tasked with helping him clear a path to the well. Great, more manual labor. The ice is thicker than your ex's skull, and every swing of the axe sends shocks up your arms. You're panting, sweating, and freezing all at once, which is just medieval winter's way of saying, screw you. Rolf singing again, something about a maiden and a goat that's definitely not radio friendly. And you're like, how are you so chipper? He just grins and says, keeps the blood moving. You're pretty sure your blood's frozen solid. The path's half cleared when a kid runs up, yelling about a broken cart. Apparently, you're the village's new handyman, because Rolf drags you to fix it. You're staring at a splintered wheel, no tools, no clue, and a crowd of peasants judging you. The cold's biting, your hangover's raging, and you're about to learn why medieval DIY is a one-way ticket to despair. You're staring at this busted cartwheel like it's a calculus exam, with Rolf breathing down your neck and a gaggle of peasants muttering about your incompetence. The snow's still falling, turning you into a soggy snowman, and your hangover's pounding like a war drum. Your hands are so numb you can't feel the hammer Rolf shoved at you. And the nails are just bent iron scraps that look like they were forged by a drunk toddler. You're like, I'm not a carpenter, I'm a Wi-Fi warrior. But Rolf just grunts. Fix it, or we're eating snow for supper. Great, no pressure. You try hammering a nail, but the wood's frozen solid, and the nail bends like it's mocking you. You swing again, miss, and smash your thumb. The same one you cut yesterday. You're howling, hopping around, and the peasants are laughing like you're the village jester. Hilda's there, because of course she is, leaning against a hut and eating an apple like she's in a medieval rom-com. Need a hand. Softy. She calls, and you're tempted to throw the hammer at her. But you'd probably miss and hit Rolf. You keep at it, splintering the wood worse than before, until Rolf sighs and takes over, fixing the wheel in 10 seconds flat. You're like, why didn't you just do that? And he mutters, teaching you grit. Grit. You've got grit in places grit shouldn't be, thanks to this frozen hell. The cart's fixed, but now you're on firewood duty again, because medieval life is just a loop of chopping, sweeping, and crying. You trudge to the woodpile, axe in hand, and start swinging at a log that's harder than your high school math teacher's heart. Each hit jars your spine, and the cold's making your breath steam like you're a sad dragon. You're halfway through when a kid pelts you with a snowball, and you're like, I'm gonna eat you into the next century. But the kid's gone, and you're just yelling at snow. Hilda's still watching, tossing her apple core into a drift, and you're starting to think she's your personal tormentor. The wood's finally split, but it's damp, because of course it is, and you're hauling it back to Agnes's when you slip on ice, scattering logs everywhere. The peasants are back, snickering, and you're like, don't you people have lives? Apparently not, because they're still here when you crawl to your feet. Back inside Angs's staring pottage. Surprise, it's lunch. And you're so hungry you don't even care that it smells like a wet dog's nightmare. You choke down a bowl, dodging chunks of mystery gristle, while Hilda plops next to you. Sharpening her knife? Surviving yet? She asks, and you're like, barely, you sadist. She laughs, and you're confused because she's kind of nice, but also terrifying. Rolf's planning another tavern night, because apparently alcoholism is the village's main hobby, but you're still hungover and begging for a pass. No dice. Rolf's dragging you along. And Hilda's coming too, probably to watch you crash and burn. The cold's worse now, the snow's deeper, and you're trudging to the tavern, already regretting every life choice. Medieval winter's got you in a chokehold, and you're one bad ol away from tapping out. You're slogging back to the tavern with Rolf and Hilda, your body screaming for mercy, and your soul applying for early retirement. The snow's up to your shins. The wind's ripping through your tunic like it's got a vendetta. And you're pretty sure your hangover's evolved into a full-blown existential crisis. Rolf's humming, some filthy ditty about a shepherd and a turnip, and Hilda's tossing snowballs at you again because apparently she's allergic to chill. You're like, can you not? But she just grins, and you're too cold to dodge. The tavern's the same sweaty cesspool as last night, packed with drunks yelling over a lute player who's clearly given up on life. The air smells like all armpits and broken dreams, and you're already regretting this sequel. Rolf shoves another mug of warm, yeasty swill into your hands, and you're like, I'm still recovering from round one. But he's not hearing it, and Hilda's daring you to chug because she's the devil in boots. You sip, gag, and pretend it's fine, but it's like drinking a liquefied gym sock. The tavern's freezing despite the crowd, with drafts sneaking in like they've got a personal grudge. You're wedged between Rolf, who's farting symphonies, and a guy who's carving his name into the table with a knife. You're like, this is why antibiotics were invented. Hilda starts another dice game, and you're out in 2 rolls because your luck's worse than a medieval dentist's. You're broke, hungover, and shivering, but the crowd's roaring, and someone spilled Al on your lap, so now you're wet and miserable. Then the lute guy announces a dance, and you're like, hard pass. But Hilda grabs your arm and yanks you into the chaos. It's less dance and more drunk stampede, with peasants flailing like they're possessed. You're stumbling, trying not to get trampled, while Hilda's spinning like a medieval Beyoncé, laughing at your 2 left feet. You step on someone's foot, and they shove you, sending you crashing into a table. Tankards fly, ale splashes, and you're apologizing to a guy who looks ready to gut you. Rolf hauls you up, cackling, and you're like, this is not my scene. The night's a blur of bad decisions, and you're barely standing when Hilda bets you can't outdrink Stumpy, the 3-fingered menace from last night. You're like, I'm gonna die. But your pride's dumber than your survival instincts, so you try. Stumpy's chugging like a pro, and you're gagging on your second mug. Vision blurring. You lose, obviously, and now you owe Stumpy another favor, which probably involves something gross like cleaning his socks. The tavern's spinning, your stomach's rebelling, and the cold seeping through the walls, reminding you that medieval winter doesn't care about your vibes. You're slurring, swaying, and Hilda's still laughing because she's clearly immortal. Rolf's shouting about a nightcap at another tavern, but you're begging for mercy because you're 1 ale away from becoming a medieval urban legend. You stumble outside, snow hitting you like a slap, and you're wondering how you're still alive. The answer: you're not sure you are. Hilda's dragging you along. And you're praying for a coma because this day's got more torture lined up. And you're fresh out of cope. You're stumbling through the snow, half dead from Elle and Hilda's relentless torment, with Rolf leading the charge to another tavern like he's on a holy quest for liver failure. The wind's slicing through you, turning your soggy tunic into an ice straitjacket, and you're shivering so hard you're practically vibrating. Your head's pounding, your stomach's staging a prison riot, and you're like, what, didn't I just stay in 2025 and binge Netflix? Hilda's skipping ahead, tossing quips about your delicate constitution, and you're too drunk to clap back. The new tavern's just the old one's uglier cousin. A leaning shack that smells like despair and stale piss. Inside, it's the same chaos. Drunks yelling. Loot guy's evil twin plucking strings like he's punishing them. And a fire that's more smoke than heat. You're like, this is just tavern DLC with worse graphics. Rolf shoves another mug at you, and you're begging. No more. I'm 90% owl already. But he's deaf to your pleas. And Hilda's betting you'll puke before midnight. Spoiler, she's probably right. You sip the ale, which tastes like it was brewed in a boot. And your stomach gurgles like it's filing for divorce. The crowd's rowdy. Someone's wrestling over a chicken leg, and you're dodging elbows while trying not to fall into the fire. Your wet clothes are freezing to your skin, and you're pretty sure your toes are ghosting you. Hilda drags you into another game. This time, it's guessing how many lice are in a guy's beard. You're like, I'm gonna hurl, but you guess a million, and somehow win a bent spoon. Great. Now you're the proud owner of medieval cutlery. The night's a blurry mess, and you're swaying when a fight breaks out over who farted loudest. You're like, this is peak civilization, as tankards fly and you duck under a table. Hilda's cheering because she's chaos incarnate, and Rolf's throwing punches like he's settling a 20-year grudge. You're crawling, all soaked and miserable, when someone steps on your hand. You yelp, and the guy, Stumpy, because of course, laughs and offers you a swig of his all. You're like, I'd rather drink plague juice. The fight dies down, and you're back on a bench, shivering and regretting every choice. Hilda's telling a story about forging a sword in a storm, and you're half listening, half praying for a time portal. Your bladder's screaming again. But the piss corner's occupied by a guy who's singing to his stream, so you're holding it like your life depends on it. The cold's relentless, seeping through the walls, and you're fantasizing about a hot shower so hard you almost cry. Rolf's planning a moonlit hunt now, because apparently he's allergic to sleep, and you're like, bro, I can't even hunt my own dignity. But he's insistent, and Hilda's in, because she lives for your suffering. You're dragged outside, snow pelting your face, and you're stumbling after them, drunk, frozen, and sure you're gonna die. The forest looms, dark and wolf-infested, and you're clutching your bent spoon like it's a lightsaber. Medieval winter's got you on the ropes, and you're one bad decision from becoming a cautionary tale. You're trudging through the forest, drunk as a skunk and twice as miserable, with Rolf and Hilda leading this insane, moonlit hunt. The snow's up to your knees. The wind's howling like it's auditioning for a horror flick, and you're clutching your bent spoon like it's gonna save you from wolves. Your tunic's frozen to your skin. Your boots are soggy death traps, and you're so cold you're pretty sure your soul's applied for a transfer to hell. Rolf's whispering about tracking a boar, and you're like, bro, I can't even track my Amazon packages. Hilda's smirking, her knife glinting in the moonlight, and you're 99% sure she's here to watch you get mauled. The forest's pitch black, except for the snow reflecting your bad life choices, and every snap of a twig has you jumping like a cat on a Roomba. You're stumbling, tripping over roots, and your hangover's hitting like a freight train. Rolf stops, sniffing the air like a deranged bloodhound, and points at some tracks. Boar, he whispers, and you're like, cool, let's not. But he's already creeping forward, and Hilda's nudging you to follow. You're whispering, this is how I die. But they ignore you, because medieval people have zero chill. Your hands are numb, your spoon's useless, and you're praying for a miracle when you hear a grunt. Not Rolf's usual fart, but a legit boar. It's huge, hairy, and staring at you like you owe it money. Rolf's grinning, Hilda's ready to stab, and you're like, I'm out. You bolt, slipping on ice, and crash into a snowdrift. The boar charges, and you're screaming, flailing your spoon like it's Excalibur. Hilda dives in, knife flashing, and Rolf's wrestling the beast like it's a bar fight. You're cowering, snow in your pants, when they finally pin it down. Hilda's laughing, covered in boar blood, and Rolf's calling you a spinless whelp. You're like, yeah, but I'm alive, so who's winning? They tie up the boar, and you're tasked with dragging it back? Because of course you are. It's heavier than your student loans, and you're slipping, cursing, and regretting every sip of ale. The snow's deeper now, the cold's eating your bones, and you're fantasizing about a hot tub while hauling this hairy corpse. Hilda's whistling, unbothered, and Rolf's planning a feast, because apparently boar means party time. You're like, can we just not die first? Back at the village, Agnes is awake, yelling about the noise, and you're dumping the boar in the yard, too tired to care. Your clothes are soaked, your spoon's bent worse than before, and you're shivering like a wet dog. Hilda tosses you a rag to clean up, and you're like, this is just a dirtier rag. She laughs, and you're starting to think she's your medieval nemesis. Rolf's already hacking at the boar, and Agnes is demanding you help cook. You're like, I'm hungover, frozen, and traumatized, but medieval life's like, cool story, chop some onions. The fire's barely going, the hovel's freezing, and you're slicing vegetables with a knife, duller than a Reddit thread. Medieval winter's still kicking your ass, and you're one boar hair away from a breakdown. You're in Agnes's hovel, slicing onions with a knife that's basically a butter spreader, your eyes streaming like you're at a rom-com marathon. The boar's being butchered outside, and the smell's a mix of blood, snow, and Rolf's BO. Your hands are numb, your tunic's a frozen rag, and you're so hungover you're seeing double. Agnes is barking orders, stirring a cauldron of boar stew that looks like it could dissolve iron. Hilda's lounging by the fire, sharpening her knife and tossing you smug looks, because apparently your misery is her cardio. You're like, can you help? And she just winks. You're doing great, softy. You're not. The onions are tougher than your will to live, and every slice feels like a personal attack. Your thumb's still throbbing from yesterday's mishaps, and you're pretty sure you're one nick away from amputation. The fire's pathetic, so the room's colder than a tax collector's heart, and your breath's fogging up like you're vaping sadness. Rolf stumps in, dragging boar chunks, and Agnes starts yelling about proper cuts. You're tasked with hauling meat to the cauldron, and it's slimy, heavy, and smells like a gym locker's nightmare. You slip, because of course you do, and a slab lands in the dirt. Ang screeches like you just burned the Magna Carta, and you're scrambling to salvage it while Hilda cackles. 5-second rule. She says, and you're like, this is why y'all died at 31. You're tossing meat into the pot, dodging Agnes's ladle swipes, when Rolf announces the feast is for the whole village. Great, more people to judge your incompetence. You're stirring the stew now, which is bubbling like a witch's brew, and something floats to the surface. Probably a bone, but you're not asking. Your stomach's growling, but you're not sure you trust this stew. Given Agnes's track record, the cold's still brutal, seeping through the walls, and you're shivering so hard, you're splashing stew everywhere. Hilda finally takes pity and throws a log on the fire, but it's damp. So now the room's just smokier. Your lungs are like, we quit. And you're coughing like you've got the plague. The village starts trickling in, peasants lugging benches and tankards. And you're like, this is a feast. Where's the vibe? It's just a bunch of frostbitten randos eyeing the stew like it's their last meal. You're serving now because apparently you're the village intern, ladling out portions while dodging grabs from greedy hands. The stew's edible, barely, but everyone's acting like it's Michelin star. You take a bite, and it's like chewing gravel with a side of regret. Hilda's next to you, eating like it's no big deal, and you're like, how are you not gagging? She shrugs. Better than starvation. Fair. The room's packed, loud, and smells like a barnyard. But the cold's still winning, and you're huddled by the fire, praying for warmth. Rolf's telling Boar, hunting stories, exaggerating so hard you're waiting for him to claim he punched a dragon. You're exhausted, your hands are blistered. And the feast is just getting started. Medieval winter's like, oh, you thought you'd rest. Cute. You're eyeing the door, dreaming of escape, but Hilda's watching. And you're pretty sure she'd tackle you. The night's young, and you're one bad bite away from medieval food poisoning. You're stuck in this feast, surrounded by peasants scarfing down boar stew like it's the Last Supper, while you're nursing a spoonful and praying it doesn't stage a comeback. The hovel's packed, smoky, and smells like a mix of bebo, stew, and existential dread. Your tunic's still damp, your hands are raw, and the cold's creeping through the walls like it's got a personal grudge. Hilda's next to you, sipping ale and smirking every time you wince at the stew's aftertaste. Rolf's in full bard mode, spinning a tale about wrestling the boar barehanded, and the crowd's eating it up, because apparently medieval fi is just bad storytelling. You're like, this is my personal hell, but you're too tired to bail. The fire's barely keeping the chill at bay, and you're shivering, your teeth chattering like they're auditioning for a marimba band. Someone passes around a loaf of bread, rock hard, naturally, and you chip a tooth trying to gnaw it. Hilda laughs, because your pain is her sitcom, and hands you a knife too. Coot it, you're sawing away, feeling like a lumberjack with a grudge, when a drunk peasant grabs your arm, slurring, dance. Lad. You're like, I'd rather die, but he's dragging you into a circle of flailing villagers. It's less a dance and more a drunken mosh pit, with people stomping and spinning like they're possessed. You're stumbling, dodging boots, and Hilda's clapping like she's at a comedy show. You step on someone's foot, and they shove you into a bench, where you land in a puddle of spilled ale. Now you're wetter, colder, and 100% done. The crowd's chanting for more stories, and Rolf nominates you, because he's a sadist. You're like, I got nothing, but Hilda's glaring, so you mumble some nonsense about slaying a frost giant with your bent spoon. The drunks cheer, because their standards are lower than a snake is belly. You're like, maybe I'm not awful at this. Then, a kid farts, stealing your thunder. And everyone laughs like it's peak comedy. You're back on the bench, soggy and humiliated, when Agnes starts yelling about cleaning up. Cleaning. There's no dishwasher, just you and a bucket of icy well water. You're scrubbing trenchers, wooden plates caked with stew, while your fingers turn blue and your soul files for bankruptcy. Hilda's helping by pointing out spots you missed, and you're like, why are you my nemesis? She just grins. And you're starting to think she's flirting in a medieval psychopath way. The feast drags on, with more awl, more dancing, and more farts, and you're barely conscious, propped up by sheer stubbornness. The cold's relentless, and you're fantasizing about a space heater while scraping grease off a trencher. Rolf's planning a night patrol. Now, because apparently sleep's for cowards, and you're like, I'm gonna die out there. But he's insistent, and Hilda's in, because she lives for chaos. You're dragged outside. Snow hitting you like a slap, and you're trudging after them, clutching your spoon like it's a talisman. The village is a frozen graveyard, and you're praying for morning. But medieval winter's like, not yet. Loser. You're one icy step away from collapse, and the night's got more misery queued up. You're trudging through the snow on this idiot night patrol, with Rolf and Hilda, your body screaming for a coma, and your spoon clutched like it's gonna fend off bandits. The village is a dark, frozen wasteland, and the wind's cutting through your tunic like a vengeful X. Your boots are soggy ice traps, your hands are numb, and you're so tired you're hallucinating a Starbucks on the horizon. Rolf's muttering about, checking the perimeter for thieves or wolves, and you're like, bro, the only thing stealing my will to live is this cold. Hilda's whistling, unbothered, her knife glinting like she's ready to shank the night itself. You're like, how are you so chill? And she just smirks, born in a blizzard, softy. You're 99% sure she's not human. The snow's deep, swallowing your legs, and every step's a battle against gravity and despair. You're shivering so hard, you're practically a human earthquake, and your breath's fogging up like you're a budget dragon. Rolf stops, peering into the dark, and you hear a rustle. Your heart's like, nope, I'm out. Picturing wolves or worse, medieval muggers. Rolf grips his axe. Hilda's ready to stab. And you're waving your spoon like it's a magic wand. It's just a fox, thank God. But you're still shaking, because you're not built for this Bear Grylls nonsense. The patrol drags on. And you're slipping, cursing, and praying for a time machine. Your stomach's churning from the stew, and you're holding in a fart, because you're pretty sure it'd freeze mid. Air. Hilda notices your grimace and laughs. Let it rip, softy. Warm you up. You're like, I'd rather die with dignity. But dignity left town hours ago. You're halfway around the village when Rolf spots tracks. Not fox, but human. He's whispering about poachers. And you're like, cool. Let's not die over some stolen rabbits. But he's creeping forward, and Hilda's nudging you to follow. You're whispering, this is a horror movie. But they ignore you. Because medieval people love drama. You're stumbling through snowdrifts, your spoon useless. When you trip and face, plant into a pile that smells suspiciously like cow crap. Hilda's cackling, Rolf's shushing her, and you're spitting out mystery snow, 100% done. The tracks lead nowhere, thank God, but you're soaked, frozen, and your ego's in the morgue. Back at Agnes's, the fire's dead, and she's snoring like a warthog. You're too tired to care, collapsing on the straw, which is now your mortal enemy. Hilda tosses a blanket at you, moth-eaten, smells like regret, and says, don't freeze, softy. I'm not done tormenting you. You're like, is this your love language? But you're too wiped to care. Rolf's already out, farting in his sleep, and you're curling up, praying for warmth. The cold's seeping through the walls. Your clothes are wet, and you're pretty sure you've got frostbite in your soul. You're drifting off, dreaming of central heating, when a creak jolts you awake. It's just the wind, but you're paranoid because medieval winters taught you one thing: nothing's safe. You're one bad dream away from a breakdown, and the night's still got tricks up its icy sleeve. You're curled up on Agnes's flea, ridden straw, shivering like a wet puppy, with that creak still haunting your brain. The blanket Hilda tossed you is thinner than your patience, and the cold's burrowing into your bones like a debt collector. Rolf's snoring, Hilda's sharpening her knife in the dark, because that's not creepy. And you're like, why is my life a medieval horror show? You're too paranoid to sleep, convinced wolves or poachers are about to bust in. Your stomach's gurgling from the boar stew. Your thumb's throbbing, and you're pretty sure you've got fleas doing the Macarena on your scalp. Morning's a myth, and you're stuck in this frozen purgatory, praying for a snooze. Somehow, you drift off, only to be kicked awake by Agnes at the crack of dawn. Whoop, you lazy sod! She yells, and you're like, it's barely light. Your body's a crime scene, sore, stiff, and smelling like a tavern floor. Agnes shoves a broom at you, because apparently, sweeping dirt is your eternal punishment. You stumble outside, where the snow's piled higher, and the wind's slapping your face like you owe it money. Your tunic's still damp, your boots are ice cubes, and you're sweeping snow that just laves and piles back up. You're like, this is Sisyphus's side gig. Hilda's up, looking annoyingly fresh, and tosses you a turnip. Breakfast, she says, and you're like, I'd rather eat my spoon. But you know it, because hunger's a cruel bastard, and it's like chewing frozen cardboard. The village is steering, peasants trudging through snow, and Rolf's yelling about fixing a fence. Great, more DIY hell. You're handed a hammer and some warped planks, and you're like, I'm not Bob the Builder. But Rolf's not hearing it, and Hilda's watching, probably betting on how fast you'll screw up. You're hammering, missing half the time, and the cold's making your fingers fumble like they're drunk. You smash your thumb, same one, because the universe hates you, and yelp, dropping the hammer into a snowdrift. Hilda's laughing, Rolf's sighing, and you're digging for the hammer, cursing loud enough to scare a monk. The fence is a wobbly disaster, but Rolf calls it good enough, which is medieval for we're all gonna die. You're tasked with hauling water next, because your job description is village punching bag. The well's a frozen nightmare, the rope's icy, and you're pulling up a bucket of slush that smells like regret. Your hands are raw, your back's screaming, and you're like, why didn't I major in time travel? Hilda's trailing you, tossing quips about your city hands, and you're too tired to snap back. Back at Ags's, the fire's out again, and you're chopping wood. Because medieval life's just a loop of pain. The axe is dull, the logs are damp, and every swing's a reminder that you're not cut out for this. You're sweating, freezing, and cursing when a kid pelts you with a snowball. You're like, I'm gonna yeet you to Narnia. But he's gone, and Hilda's cackling. The cold's still king, your body's a wreck, and you're one bad chop away from losing a toe. Medieval winter's got you on your knees, and it's not done kicking. You're scrubbing Agnes's cauldron, hands raw and lungs choking on smoke, while Hilda's smirking, like your misery's her personal cabaret. The village is abuzz with whispers of a witch, and you're like, great. Now we're in a budget Salem reboot. Your tunic's a frozen rag, your thumbs throbbing, and the cold's gnawing your bones like a tax auditor. Agnes is yelling about cleaner pots, but this cauldron's filth is older than her grudges. You're scrubbing, sneezing, and praying for a hot shower when Rolf bursts in, face grim. They're saying you're the witch, lad, he says, and you're like, meh, I can't even spell Lex. Apparently, your genes and fancy talk. You said, Vibus. Once it make you suspect. Medieval logic, if it's weird, it's Satan. Hilda's laughing, because of course, and you're like, help me, you gremlin. She just winks, run fast, softy. The villagers are gathering outside, torches flickering, and you're picturing a pitchfork party with you as the piata. Agnes shoves you toward the back door. Hide, you daft turd. She hisses, and you're bolting into the snow, heart pounding. The wind's howling, snow's blinding, and you're slipping. Because your boots are soggy traitors. You dive behind a privy, which smells like a portal to hell, and crouch, praying the mob doesn't sniff you out. Your teeth are chattering. Your stomach's rioting from pottage, and you're like, this is my villain origin story. Torchlight flickers nearby, and you hear Rolf arguing. He's no witch. Just useless. Thanks, bro. You're shivering, half frozen, when Hilda's voice cuts through. Oi, softy, move. She's there, knife out, pointing to the woods. You're like, woods, with wolves. But the mob's closing in, so you sprint, snow swallowing your legs. Hilda's keeping pace, tossing quips about your witchy sprint, and you're too terrified to clap back. The forest's dark, branches slapping your face, and you're tripping over roots like a drunk toddler. Your spoon, still in your pocket, pokes your thigh, and you're like, even you're against me. The mob's shouts fade, but the cold's relentless, and you're soaked, gasping. And sure you're gonna die. Hilda grabs your arm, yanking you behind a tree. Quiet, she whispers, and you're clenching everything because you hear twigs snapping. it's just a deer. Thank God, but you're a wreck. And Hilda's grinning like this is her cardio. Not bad, softy. She says, and you're like, I'm having 12 heart attacks. The village is quiet now, but you're not risking it. Hilda leads you to a cave, barely warmer than outside, and you're collapsing, breath steaming. Your clothes are ice, your fleas are partying, and you're like, why is medieval life just pain? Hilda builds a tiny fire, and you're huddling, praying for salvation. The day's been poop pots, wolves' ale, and now a witch hunt, and you're one shiver away from giving up. Hilda's sharpening her knife, humming, and you're like, are you my savior or my executioner? She laughs, and you're too tired to care. The cold's still king, the mob's probably still mad, and you're wondering if you'll see morning. Spoiler, medieval winter's got one last kick, and you're the soccer ball. You're huddled in this damp cave, teeth chattering like a maraca band, with Hilda's tiny fire doing jack against the cold that's basically your roommate now. Your tunic's a soggy ice pack, your boots are squelching, and you're pretty sure your fleas have unionized. Hilda's sharpening her knife, looking like a Viking influencer. And you're like, are we safe, or am I your next project? She smirks. Relax, softy. Mob's too drunk to search this far. Great, so your own leash, mostly dead. The cave smells like mold and regret, and you're curled up, trying to remember what warmth feels like. Your stomach's growling, but the thought of pottage makes you gag, and your thumb's throbbing like it's got its own pulse. You're like, day's been poop, wolves' ale, and now I'm a fugitive. Cool. Hilda tosses you a scrap of bread, hard as a brick, naturally, and you're gnawing it, chipping a tooth, while she tells a story about forging a sword in a storm. You're half listening, half praying for a time portal, when you hear a howl. Not a cute doggo howl. We're eating you. Wolf howl. Your heart's like, I'm out. And you're clutching your bent spoon like it's a grenade. Hilda's unfazed, knife ready, and you're like, how are you so calm? She shrugs. Wolves don't like my vibe. You're not that lucky. The howls get closer, and you're whispering, we're gonna die. But Hilda's creeping to the cave mouth, motioning you to stay. You're frozen, literally and figuratively, when a wolf's shadow flickers. You're like, this is it, I'm dog food. But Hilda chucks a rock, and the shadow bolts. You're shaking, and she's like, told ya, softy. They're more scared of me. You're not sure if she's bluffing, but you're alive, so you'll take it. The fire's dying, and the cold's back, slapping you like an angry ex. You're shivering, your breath's fogging, and you're like, can we go back? Hilda shakes her head. Mob's still mad. Wait till dawn. Dawn. You're barely surviving now. You're huddling closer to the fire, which is more smoke than heat, and your lungs are like, we're on strike. Hilda tosses you her cloak. Moth-eaten smells like a barnyard, and you're like, thanks, I think. She's humming again. And you're starting to think she's your medieval guardian angel, but, like, the stabby kind. The cave's quiet except for your chattering teeth and distant howls, and you're reflecting on this hell. Date chamber pots, pottage, taxes, taverns, and now a witch hunt. You're like, I'd sell my soul for why, fi. Sleep. thoughts calling. But the cold's like, nah, suffer. You doze off, dreaming of pizza, only to jolt awake when Hilda pokes you. Move, softy. Sky's lightening. You're like, already. But the gray smear outside says morning's here. Your body's a wreck, your spoon's still useless. And you're trudging after Hilda, snow crunching, praying the village has chilled out. The cold's still brutal. Your fleas are thriving, and you're one bad step from collapse. Medieval winter's laughing, and you're like, I'm not built for this. Hilda's leading, knife out, and you're hoping for a miracle. But knowing your luck, it's about to get worse. You're stumbling after Hilda through the snow, bleary, eyed and half, dead, with the dawn sky looking like a dirty dishcloth. Your body's a landfill of pain, sore, frozen, and smelling like a privy's cousin. The cloak Hilda lent you is barely keeping the cold at bay, and your spoon's jabbing your thigh like it's got a personal vendetta. You're like, if I survive, I'm framing this spoon as a war trophy. Hilda's striding ahead, knife out, scanning for mob stragglers or wolves, and you're waddling, praying the village has forgotten the which. Nonsense. The snow's deep, the wind's biting, and you're shivering so hard, you're practically a human vibrator. Your stomach's screaming for food, but the memory of pottage makes your soul recoil. You're like, I'd kill for a burger, but I'd settle for not dying. The village looms. Huts sagging under snow, and you're bracing for torches and pitchforks. Hilda peeks around a hut, then waves you forward. They're sleeping it off, she whispers, and you're like, thank God, drunks need naps. You creep toward Agnes's hovel, slipping on ice, because of course, and face plant into a snowdrift. Hilda's snickering, and you're spitting snow, muttering, this is my life now. Inside, Agnes is steering pottage, because what else? And Rolf's snoring, sprawled like a hungover bear. You collapse by the fire, which is more ash than flame, and Agnes glares. Thought you were Wolf Chow, she says, and you're like, M2, Agnes, me too. She shoves a bowl of sludge at you, and you're so hungry you don't care that it tastes like despair and feet. Hilda's lounging, sharpening her knife, and you're like, do you ever stop? She winks. Not till you're tough, softy. You're too tired to argue, choking down pottage while the cold seeps through the walls. Your clothes are still wet. Your fleas are throwing a rave. And you're like, I'm 1 inch away from insanity. Rolf wakes farts and announces you're on privy duty. Today, privy duty? You're like, I'd rather fight the wolves. But he's serious, handing you a shovel and pointing to the village latrine, a pit that smells like Satan's sauna. You're gagging, scooping frozen filth, and the cold's making your hands fumble like they're on strike. Villagers are passing, snickering, and you're like, what? Use this hellhole. So who's the real loser? A kid pelts you with a snowball, because kids are demons, and you're yelling, I'm in poop hell, leave me alone. Hilda's watching, eating an apple, and you're like, why are you my personal curse? She tosses you the core, saying, keeps you sharp. You're not sharp. You're a dull, frozen mess. The privy's clean, but you're covered in mystery stains, and the cold's laughing, turning your breath to fog. You're trudging back, dreaming of sanitation, when Rolf says the Lord's men are back for extra taxes. Great, more goons. You're like, I've got nothing but trauma, but they're coming, and you're tasked with hiding the good pottage again. The day's barely noon, and you're already a fugitive, a poop scooper, and a tax evader. Medieval winter's got you by the throat, and you're one bad move from snapping. You're back in Agnes's hovel, hiding a pot of good pottage, which still smells like a Jim Sock's funeral. While the Lord's men stomp closer, your hands are caked with privy gunk. Your tunic's a frozen biohazard, and you're like, I'm one tax demand away from a mental breakdown. Helda's shoving spoons and a bent tankard under a bench, whispering, don't screw this up, softy. And you're like, no promises, I'm running on fumes. Rolf's outside, probably bribing the goons with a moldy carrot, and Agnes is hissing about, keeping your witch mouth shut. You're like, still not a witch, but cool. The door slams open and Bulldog Face, the tax goon from yesterday, struts in, chainmail clanking like he's auditioning for a medieval action flick. Taxes. Now. He barks, and you're crouching behind a barrel, praying your fleas don't sneeze. Agnes plays dumb, claiming the village is poorer than a monk's vows, but Bulldog's sniffing around, kicking over a stool. You're clenching everything, because if he finds you, you're either taxed or torched. Your stomach's gurgling, your thumbs throbbing, and the cold's turning your toes to ice cubes. Hilda's across the room, winking like this is a game. And you're like, stop enjoying my panic. Bulldog grabs a sack of barley, Agnes Fakries, and you're like, Oscar, worthy, grandma. He's about to leave when you slip, knocking over the barrel. It crashes, you're sprawled, and Bulldog spins, sword half drawn. Who's this? He growls, and you're stammering, just sweeping. Hilda chimes in, he's the privy boy. And the goons laugh, because apparently, poop duty's hilarious. You're humiliated but alive, and Bulldog leaves, taking the barley and your dignity. Agnes smacks your head, muttering, useless as a gilded mule, and you're like, love you too. The hovel's freezing, the fire's pathetic, and you're tasked with chopping more wood, because medieval life's just recycled torture. You're outside, axe slipping, logs laughing at your weak swings. The snow's piling up, the wind's slapping your face, and you're like, I'd sell my soul for a chainsaw. A kid pelts you with a snowball, because of course, and you're yelling, go haunt someone else. Hilda's watching, tossing quips about your city arms, and you're too cold to clap back. You're hauling wood inside when Rolf says the village needs night watch volunteers. You're like, hard pass, I'm allergic to death. But he's dragging you along because consent's not medieval. The cold's brutal, your spoon's still poking you, and you're trudging through snow, scanning for wolves or bandits. Your breath's fogging, your hands are numb, and you're like, this is just patrol with extra frostbite. Hilda's there, knife out, humming like she's on a picnic, and you're like, air you human. The village is quiet, but the dark's creepy, and every shadow's a potential wolf. You're shaking, not just from cold. And Rolf's muttering about, toughening you up. You're like, I'm tough enough, let me sleep. But medieval winter doesn't care, and the night's got more misery cued. You're one bad step from collapse. Your fleas are thriving, and you're praying for morning, but knowing your luck, it's going to be another shit show. You're on this freezing night watch, stumbling through snow with Rolf and Hilda, your body a museum of pain, and your spoon now a metaphor for your uselessness. The village is a dark, icy ghost town, and the cold's so brutal you're pretty sure your blood's slush. Your tunic's a soggy prison, your boots are betraying you, and you're like, I'd trade my soul for a hoodie. Hilda's humming, knife glinting, and Rolf's muttering about bandits, while you're scanning for wolves, because your luck's that trash. Every crunch in the snow has you jumping, and you're like, I'm not a hero, I'm a Wi-Fi gremlin. Your hands are numb, your thumbs still throbbing. And your fleas are basically family now. The wind's howling, snow's blinding, and you're shivering so hard you're a one-man earthquake. Rolf stops, sniffing the air like a deranged hound, and you're like, please don't say bore. It's just wind, thank God, but you're still a wreck. Hilda nudges you, surviving, softy, and you're like, barely you sadist. The watch drags, your legs are jelly, and you're dreaming of a warm bed when you slip, face planting into a drift. Hilda's cackling, Rolf sighing, and you're spitting snow, muttering, this is my legacy. Dawn's creeping, a gray smear, and Rolf calls it quits. You're limping back to Agnes's, where the fire's dead and she's snoring like a warthog. You collapse on the straw, which is now your mortal enemy, and wrap yourself in Hilda's ratty cloak. Your body's screaming, your stomach's empty, and you're like, I survived, but at what cost? The day's been a gauntlet: poop pots, pottage, wolves, taxes, taverns, witch hunts, and privy duty. You're a walking bruise, smelling like a landfill, and your spoon's the only thing you've kept. Hilda's by the door, sharpening her knife, and says, not bad, softy. You're tougher than you look. You're like, is that a compliment or a threat? She laughs, and you're too wrecked to care. The cold's still seeping through the walls. But you're alive, which feels like a scam. You're drifting off, dreaming of central heating, when Agnes kicks you. You lazy git. She yells, and you're like, it's been 5 minutes. But it's morning, and medieval life's like, no rest, just pain. You're groaning, every muscle rioting. And Rolf's already yelling about chopping wood. You're like, I'm done, send me back to 2025. But there's no time machine, just more snow, more cold, and more Hilda smirking. You're clutching your spoon, half dead, and reflecting medieval winter's a beast, and you're no match. Freezing, starving, and mobbed, you've limped through one day, but another's coming, and you're fresh out of cope. You're like, if I survive this, I'm writing a Yelp review for 1347, 0 stars. Would not recommend. The cold's laughing. Your fleas are dancing, and you're praying for a miracle. But medieval winter's like, nice try, loser. You're out, snoring on straw, and somewhere. Hilda's probably betting you'll screw up tomorrow. Spoiler, she's right.